So let me pause this. Let me pause this real quick. I'm finna try to explain the lymphatic system. So starting with the first part. The first part I really struggle. I'm gonna try to make this quick because I do like to talk a lot. I really struggled how lymph started. So we'll start there because that part didn't make sense to me. I understand the lymphatic system in the stages, kind of, well enough to like take a quiz, I guess, on it. But I didn't understand where the lymph come, like where does lymph come from? We know it comes from blood vessels and blood capillaries. Like that's cool and all, but what does that mean? It comes from that. Like what specifically does that mean? So this behind me is supposed to explain a little bit of that, and then we'll go and then I'll send separate videos explaining the lymphatic system and then the stages of that. So we essentially have our heart, right? The left side is what's pumping deoxygenated blood. Well, that deals with deoxygenated blood, and the right side, which is it says red, is supposed to deal with oxygenated blood. Right, right. So our arteries are used to take blood away from the heart, right? And then that blood is then transferred through blood capillaries. Let me pause this really quick. So yeah, I forgot where I left off at. But yeah, we essentially have our oxygenated blood, which essentially travels through the blood capillaries, which are different than the lymphatic capillaries, by the way. We have blood capillaries and lymphatic capillaries, right? Right. And then the oxygen is removed from the blood. This kind of gives you a basis on the diagram I have here. Your oxygen is removed from the blood. Then it travels up through this vein. Your blood is then cleansed through the lungs, and then it re-enters a set of blood capillaries, is reoxygenated, and then goes back into the heart, and then it does that all over again, right? So in the blood capillaries, we do know blood moves by the heart pumping. We do know the heart moves blood around by contractile tissue. That's smooth contractile tissue, right? With that being said, that means that the blood is always pushing against the walls of the blood capillaries, right? What we also know is that there are actually holes in the blood capillaries, right? The reason for those holes, and you may ask, why are there holes in the blood capillaries? The reason for those holes are for two things. As you know, in like the first page or two of the textbook, it talks about us losing 30 liters of, was it capillary fluid? It wasn't blood. It was more lymphatic or capillary fluid, which is just plasma. It's just clear plasma. It's not actual blood. But we lose about 30 liters, and we end up regaining about 27 liters, and that 3 liters that's left over, that is leaked into the interstitial tissue, which is the space between cells. That diagram there is supposed to depict that. You can't see that yet. I'll pick my computer up in just a moment and show you. But I'm just giving you a basis before I actually like give you all the details. So you may, once more, you may ask, why are there holes in the blood capillaries? Well, the reason that there are holes in the blood capillaries is because our cells exchange materials from the blood or gain materials from the blood, such as when our cells need glucose, they are able to gain that by the plasma leaking, and well, by the little holes that are in the, not the plasma, but by the little holes that are in the blood capillaries, right? And that's where our plasma leaks out also, because since the blood is constantly being pumped by the heart, it is pressured up against the blood capillary walls, and it ends up leaking out. And that plasmic fluid leaks out also into these spaces around the cells, right? And that's where we start that little exchange of plasma through those holes is where the lymphatic system becomes important. Why does my computer get dark all of a sudden? But that's where the lymphatic system becomes important. It's because with that, we need something that can filter out those fluids so we don't end up with an excess amount of fluid. For example, people with elephantitis or edema have an excess amount of fluid. And that excess amount of fluid can cause swelling, and then that swelling can cause our organs to swell. So if you see someone with elephantitis, which is just mean they have really big body parts, like someone with a really big leg, we know that they have an excess amount of fluid in the spaces between their cells, which can cause tissue damage, which is edema. So that's the first part, is that's where the lymph comes from. It's that those holes in the blood capillaries that, and you may wonder, okay, well, why do we need those holes, and why aren't the cells entering those holes? Well, the holes are too small for the cells to enter into. The cells are very big or semi-big molecules compared to the little holes, right? So those holes are generally used for an exchange. And with that exchange, of course, our plasmic fluid leaks out of those holes as well because of the pressure that's created by the blood, because our heart is constantly pumping blood. And that causes the blood to rush through and rush against the walls of our arteries and our blood capillaries. Hopefully this made a little bit of sense. Give you a better depiction of the diagram. Ooh, so I'm facing the wrong way. So yeah, we have our blue side, which is deoxygenated. Red side is the oxygenated. Our arteries carry blood away from the heart. Oxygenated blood goes down through the blood capillaries, which is down there, right? And there are holes in the blood capillary, as I explained, and those fluids leak out. So when those fluids leak out, we then need our lymphatic system to handle that excess fluid. So it looks a little something like this. These are our red blood cells that are all in an artery. And this is the fluid that is leaking out between those blue circles, which are the cells. And we need something to help balance will help balance the amount of fluid that we have. So, and that's where our lymphatic system comes in at, and I'll send a video or two after this one that kind of gives you a synopsis on the stages of the lymphatic system. But this part just basically explains where lymph comes from. That fluid that's there in those in the interstitial spaces is the lymph. And that's how it starts. And that's why we need the lymphatic system. Hopefully this makes sense.